Hello, everybody. I'm Ron Watkins, and I'm here with a very special guest and my co-host, Tony Teora. Hey, Tony.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Ron. Really excited today. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show, and we're here with the director of the pandemic. He's a he's a fantastic filmmaker he's found himself at like all these weird places throughout his whole life, kind of like how like uh Forrest Gump was able to find himself into all these places that ended up being really, really big, like cultural phenomenon over the years. And Mickey Willis, you were at the ground zero for 9/11. What was that like? Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I was. Just to kind of complete that, what you just mentioned, there have just been several times. For instance, I was standing directly behind Rodney King when he said, "Can't we all just get along?" And that was just by fluke. I guess maybe not according to the universe, but I just happened to be stumbling past a press conference in LA and was curious, and so I did the Forrest Gump looking over the shoulder, and right when I did that is when he uttered those infamous words. And several other things that I've just found myself at the center at, which I added in my book, that kind of leads us to the situation with this pandemic. But the 9/11 situation was one of the most transformative situations that I found myself in the middle of, and that was I had directed my first movie and was in New York, had a distribution meeting on the 8th, September 8th, and then went out to dinner with a buddy of mine on the 9th. During that dinner, my buddy was asking, I was staying with him, sleeping on his couch while we were there for that meeting. And he had found out just through conversation that I'd never visited the World Trade Center, and became incredibly obsessed that night, that the next day, which would be September 10th, that I visited the World Trade Center. I mean, it kind of ruined the dinner because he just became so obsessed with making sure all night long. He kept saying, don't bullshit me. You're going to go, right? You're going to go. And he wrote directions on the napkin, how to get there, what subway to take. And so I went to the World Trade Center for the first time as a tourist on the 10th, and took a picture for him to prove that I had been there. But the strange thing was when I finally said to him, his name was Doug. I actually have a call with him tonight just to kind of update. We call each other every 2 or 3 years. He said, I asked him, I said, "Doug, why do you care so much that I go to the World Trade Center before I leave New York? What is your obsession with this?" And he said, "Because I want you to stand at the base of these buildings and look up at them. And I want you to see what an absolute joke it was that they tried to take them down a few years ago. A bomb had gone off in the garage of the World Trade Center a few years before, and which did a little bit of damage, but nothing close to what ultimately took them down. And I just thought it was the strangest, objective ever. I just laughed and I said, "Oh, all right, man, whatever, Doug, I'll go check them out." And then ironically, the next morning, he's the one that woke me up, completely out of words, pale faced, and was pointing at the screen and said, "They bombed us. They bombed us." And so initially I thought it was a practical joke, because I thought, wow, he wanted me to go down there so bad, and now there's this thing happening. And I said, "Let's go on your roof and see this, Doug," because we were right in Midtown. And we went up. As soon as the elevator doors opened, all the neighbors were out there, all crying and hysterical, and I knew right away that it was real. But long story short is that was the event that really shaped my future.
That's a fantastic story. And you have this story and many other stories in your book, The Pandemic, 100% censored and 0% debunked, which is available on Amazon. And you wrote in the book that you turned down millions of dollars to make it, and you're actually 100% funded by donations.
Yeah.
Do you feel that this is a successful financial model that other directors and filmmakers could consider for taking on their projects?
Absolutely, 100%. And a lot of people are doing that now. This is actually a model that I designed for Robert Kennedy Jr. He had reached out to me one day and wanted us to create media for him, because he knew that I became aware of the vaccine agenda about 11 years ago. And I had done a couple of things online just to warn the world, 8 or 9 years ago, that the push to mandate vaccines in the school for our little ones would ultimately become a push to mandate them for all people. to which was the first time I was called a conspiracy theorist and laughed at. And now here we are. And so I developed this model, and the model was derived from a startup that I was involved in a number of years ago, which was a distribution model trying to get cause-driven films, the films that really make a difference, mostly documentaries that carry these higher messages and were outside of the world of the indoctrinated propaganda that is most platforms these days, Netflix and all of them. And so I'd been developing this platform with a bunch of people for about 2 years, and through that process really had to dig into what the barriers were, what stopped these films from reaching the world, who was stopping these truthful films from reaching the world. And through that process, I realized that the model had to be a people-powered, decentralized model. And so that's what we did with Plandemic. Is we told everyone we have to do it 100% on donations because there can't be an ROI. One thing that kills the distribution of most independent films is that you have to then sell them, and you have to constantly be thinking of how are we going to pay back our investors and make money on this film. So it actually limits the amount of people that get to see them. And most people that make documentaries are not making them for the money. If they are, they're very ill-informed of how the industry works. We make them to make a difference. And so I had to kind of reverse engineer everything. And after having served a lot of people in the self-help world for years and becoming very disillusioned with that whole movement and realizing that it was all this marketing funnel stuff of getting butts in seats and selling products, I just got so allergic to that I started to realize that solutions are often found in reverse engineering things. And so I looked at that model and I realized that there was kind of a not even kind of, very much a at the base of it was greed and kind of a hoarding energy. You know, you have to capture the emails and capture their attention and keep everyone here on this side and collect everybody so that they become, currency for us in the future. And so I said, well, if that's the current model, then what's the reverse of that? And for me, it was, well, generosity. What if we just made this free to the people with no barriers? Don't even ask for an email to sign up. And we just give it away to the people because it should be. The people deserve to have this. It's the information that's been kept from them. And so Plandemic was the very first time that we went with that fully. And as you said, turned down millions of dollars from all the opportunists that come out when something goes as big as Plandemic did, with all these. If I had a penny for every time I've heard the word monetization in the past 2 years, everybody reaching out with ways that I can monetize and monetization, this and that. And I just said, I'm not interested. I'm just not. I trust that everything that we need will be provided when it's needed. But we're not making this for that kind of profit.
Well, the way you distribute your movie is really very interesting. You put it up for free download on your website, plandemicseries.com, and you encourage people to take it and to publish it into as many places as they can. This kind of distribution model kind of spreads like a virus, actually.
Absolutely.
And I used to run an internet platform, and when some topic or something tries to get censored, the best way around the censorship is to distribute the publication of it. And that's something that we're seeing with groups like Project Veritas, and I do it a bit with my stuff. And I'm curious, so what type of data do you think this type of distribution model is going to be best utilized for in the future? And do you encourage other people to use that kind of distribution model?
100%. I think it's really the only model if we want to get the films out there. If it depends on what your objective is. If it's profit, no. But if it's getting the word out, then absolutely. And I've had probably once a week, I have some kind of an offer for somebody who wants to invest what we're doing because they see the value in the reach that we've acquired through our work. And it's just the same answer every time. We're not interested in investment. I don't want anyone to come into what we're doing here. It's one of the ways that the people that we're up against that are at the helm of this agenda, I don't believe that all of them were just born bad and with this evil intent to destroy mankind. I think that through incremental steps, through the lure of temptation, through the constant reward and punishment system that's set up, that tells them that they're a good boy every time that they do something bad. They just continue to go down that rabbit hole until they've lost complete touch with who they are, their morals, their life purpose, all of that. And so we have to be incredibly diligent not to ever take that bait, because then we just end up as part of the problem. And so I highly recommend that all creators really start. We all have to survive, so there has to be some kind of a monetary model that will allow us to sustain the work that we do. And thankfully, really with a ton of gratitude for the support that we have from around the world now, just through in micro donations, we are funding all of our films. We're currently working on Plandemic 3, and it was 100% funded through the people. And as it expands, then we'll do, put another ask out for a little bit more if we want to do a marketing campaign or whatever. But as I said earlier, it's always there. It's always provided for us. And I really believe that there's a some benevolent, unnameable force that's behind that kind of action. When you're in a place of what I like to refer to as pure service, and I use the word pure in a very calculated way, because I realized that for years I was in a place of service, and from the outside it looked really good, but there was always a little tinge of me in it, always a little bit of, and that's how we're wired to, like, how do I get a little more power? Even if it's more power to do more good, there's still a little bit of glorifying the persona and all of that. And it's like, the more you can purify and get that stuff out of your system and realize that we're just service. How about just service to the human organism? And just start with that. And then, and the fear goes away at that point. You gotta rid yourself of the fear, because then you're always thinking of, well, if I do this, that might cause discomfort on my life and I might lose friends. So there's always that me in there, right? You're always trying to make it more comfortable or rewarding for yourself. And what I found is, the more we just stand in honor of truth, regardless of what side it falls on, regardless of the pushback, the danger, or any of that, just keep telling the truth in its most conscious form, not truth that we have to be very careful a lot, because we get worked up emotionally sometimes by what we discover through our research. But if we come out in a way that only polarizes the issue and then further drives that wedge between the people, then we're actually doing a disservice to the main objective. And so the more that we can really look at this from a point of view of, I'll give you an example of that. So just recently, I found myself, I live in Texas, and for months we had almost no masks anywhere, and it was wonderful. And then suddenly the Omicron thing crept up. And as I went out to do my first round of Christmas shopping, I was like, oh, it's back. Like, everyone, 90% of the people had masks on. And it was just kind of startling to me that here we are again. Oh my God, here we are again. And so I found myself in the shopping mall doing a lot of head shaking and under my breath just going, wow, you idiot. Take that mask off that child. What are you doing, people? I can't even hear you. What? I'm trying to order, from the cashier, and you got the glass and the mask, and I'm just irritated. And then I had thought, man, okay, so let me take my personal responsibility in the situation. If I spend half my day irritated and cursing under my breath, what kind of energy am I putting out into the world, into this organism that is humanity? So I thought, I need to transform this, because this is what makes us bitter and disconnected, and this is what they want, because then we start to reject each other. We get in that name calling mode. And so I thought, okay, I need to transform this right now, because I've had it with especially with people putting masks on babies. I just want to go up to the parent and shake them. And so I said, please show me, like, what is another position I can take, another point of view that I can look at this situation from. And what came to me has helped me a great deal. And that is, I said to myself, if I really believe that there's something, and we can get into this later, because this is a kind of a new belief system that I have adapted since the release of Plandemic, which was really understanding that there's some benevolent intelligence that's governing this experience we call life. And if that is the truth, which I believe it to be, then where is the divinity in that situation? Where is the divinity? That was the question I asked myself. How is that perfect? How is that right? And the answer that I got was, I said, understanding, something I've studied for years, which is the work of the hero's journey, and understanding that there's a lot of sacrifice that comes with some heroes are there to actually become the model through the sacrificing of paying the ultimate price, which is life. And so I thought, what if these people are playing a role to wake the rest of the organism up? And they're literally unconsciously, subconsciously playing out this role to behave like such sheep, so that we can have that model to look at and to understand what not to do to wake the rest of us up. And in turn, they're paying the ultimate price by sacrificing their life and even the life of their children. Like, could I see them as a possible hero? So now what I do when I walk through a mall and I see a bunch of masks, my impulse is, stupid. No, wait, hero. Let me just try that on for a little bit. Even if that's just a game I'm playing with myself, it works, because I start to look at them and just go, as we might look at someone from the military and say, thank you for your service. I look at them and say, thank you for your service. In your own unconscious way, you're ultimately doing something that's waking up the rest of the world. So,
Well, Mickey, I'd like to say that I think you're a hero. I think what you've done has really woken up the world. You've shaken up the world. You're changing the world, and you're a real inspiration to many people. I think you probably know that, right? What you're doing is, there's not a lot of people out there that are willing to tell the truth, because it's very costly, actually, as you probably know. Most of my friends, people like Ron, he constantly putting stuff out there that he believes to be true, whether it's controversial or not. And I know it's cost him personally. The media today, it's sad. I used to have respect as a kid for like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all these newspapers. I used to think, oh wow, it's cool. I actually, used to write a lot. I write a little bit of science fiction these days, and I used to write for a newspaper. And then I discovered, that the news wasn't printing the truth. It was printing what the owners told us that was okay to print. And I think it's a really sad situation. We need people like you to go out there and fight for the truth. I think that there's a cost, and I've noticed that you've probably paid a little bit of a cost. I noticed that, like the New York Times, they try to slander you. I'm just curious, what's your thought of journalism nowadays? I think journalism, where are we going to go with journalism? Like, what's the next stage? Because if we don't change what we're doing, obviously what we're doing now is not working. And we're all on the same page. We want to make this a better place for all our kids, whether people are Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians. There's a lot of divisiveness nowadays. And I think you're one of the people out there that really espouses, like trying to get rid of this divisiveness. What can we do? Can you tell us what we can do for the next step?
yeah, sure. I first want to respond to your words. Thank you for your kindness and your compliments. And I will say that that the bar for being a hero is incredibly low. And so I completely receive what you're saying. But if you really understand what I've done is simply tell the truth. And I'm working with all these doctors that are suddenly, Dr. Malone and Peter McCullough and all these incredible Dr. Zelenko, all very close friends of mine. And they're all winning hero awards and all of that. And nobody in this fight is really interested in that. We understand what it means, how that word has been planted in our lexicon. And what's funny is all the doctors are just like, I'm being called a hero because I said something out loud that we all know to be true. Everyone in the science knows that ivermectin is not a horse dewormer or whatever it is. They just say that that's not true, or that is true, or whatever. And so we have to really examine how low the bar has become for that kind of an act to be known as heroic. Because and I would say that for anyone listening, I can tell you, because I am me, that there's nothing that I possess that even when it comes to a great deal of wisdom or education, I'm a high school dropout. I spent most time in studying a field of really trying to understand humanity. I mean, I was very interested in ontology and ontological research, and really studying what makes us tick. And I was more interested in that than what any university had to offer. And I'm grateful for that now, because, I realize now that the universities are largely indoctrination camps. So I just wanted to say that out loud, because what is important is, I said this at a book signing. When first day I did book signings, I had a real issue with it, because I thought, I had people saying, if you do this, you sell your book for this, and you sign it, you can sell it for this amount. And I said, I'm not going to sell my signature. I said, it's just a whole weird thing to me. And it's a thing that we have to re-examine to understand that one of the reason that we have people at the top of this pyramid is because we place them there. They somewhere through their monopolies, like Bill Gates, they earned a lot of money. So because he has so much money, we associate that with status, and status with value, and value with being above us. And so we place these people above us. And I was trying to grapple with this idea that I'm doing a book signing. Like, this is so weird to me. I want the message out there. So if I have to sit here and do that, I will, because I want to interact with the people, first of all, and I want them to have my book. I'm looking at ways now. I have a call later today about how I can find a way to pay my publisher for a bunch of books so I can give them away. I want all this stuff to be free. And so I had to, really come to terms with that whole concept. And what I said to one person that came up to me, she was nervous and, to meet me. And I just thought, this is weird. I go, I'm just a father. I'm a filmmaker and a father. And I said, if where do you live? And she told me what town she lived in. And I said, I've never been there before. Tell me something cool about that town. And then she told me, and I said, how do you get there? And she told me the address and how to get there. And I said, so you just gave me direction to a place that I'd never been before. I don't immediately put you above me because you know something that I don't know. You know a terrain, an area because you've been there, and I just haven't been there yet. We're sharing information. I said, so I ask you to look at this, and I'm just sharing information. I spent time researching. You haven't done that yet. And so I'm giving you direction, and that's it. Two humans sharing information. Let's just keep clear that there's no reason to be nervous to talk with me, because just that energy is indicative of, you seeing me as something other than you. And we have to do everything in our powers to start seeing ourselves in each other and as each other, because that's reality. And that's what's being taken away from us right now through all these different ideologies. The slicing and dicing of every label and every box is getting smaller and smaller. It was the gay and lesbian movement. There's gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, whatever, X, B, G, Q. It just keeps going, right? And this is all, it's, feminism, then it's first wave, second wave, fourth wave. This is part of the thing to keep us in these smaller and smaller boxes. And so we have to be incredibly diligent with the way that we've been programmed to see each other and to relate to each other, so that we can appreciate each other with gratitude, but never idolization. Let's not create greater hierarchies in our social structures.
Well, when I called you a hero, I wasn't saying that I was idolizing you, Mickey.
I totally get it. I totally get it.
But I wanted to, recognize the great work that you're doing now. Is it true that the book, are you getting rich off this book, or is this going to donations?
I've not seen one penny off this book so far. I haven't even asked my publisher what it's made or how it's doing, because honestly, I don't care.
Well, Mickey, it seems like a theme of your work is that you take truth over money. Yeah. And you said in your book that making a documentary about the truth of what happened to the Covington kids was sort of like a moment of no turning back for you. Because my understanding is you were like a Bernie supporter, and at that time initially you were like, well, perhaps the Native Americans were in the right here. And then you looked closely at what happened at the events, and you realized that the Covington kids were in the right. And you had to make a conscious decision of like, do you continue down this path of putting out this movie, but you might become an enemy of the group of the people that you consider to be close associates. Yeah. Now, do you regret making that choice to turn yourself into basically an enemy of your friends?
No, I don't, because you can't be an enemy of your friends. I have a lot of people that will ask me, they'll say, I bet you've lost a lot of friends during this process, haven't you? And I said, not one. I lost a lot of people that I thought were my friends or that were posing as my friends, but what I actually gained were true friends. So you can't lose friends like that. You know, if you
That's
tell the
beautiful.
truth or have an opposing opinion and someone goes away as a result of that, it's just cleaning house for you, just saving time. And so I have no concern about that anymore. And do I regret it? Not whatsoever. That's one of the things that I'm most proud of, is the fact that we were able to help a group of innocent citizens. I don't care if they're male, I don't care if they're white, I don't care what party they support. And all I know is that we set out to make, because I've been working with indigenous cultures and Native American cultures for a long time, many years. And when I saw that headline popped up, I believed it. It seemed to be accurate and true. And I went into my office that day and we were working on another project. I said to everyone, put that aside. Let's make a video to expose these kids, because what they just did is horrible. And I knew a lot of the people that were part of the march that these kids were supposedly had surrounded and started chanting, "Build the wall," which I thought was just, wow, what a horrible thing to do. And it took us about a half a day to figure out that the kids were totally set up. They did nothing wrong. They bought red hats, you know, that said "Make America Great" on them, only because they were trying to find each other. They were at their own march and they were losing each other. They're on a field trip from their school and they were losing each other. And so they wanted to find a matching shirt or a matching hat. And that was all that was there, $5 hats. And the kids thought it was funny. They're not into politics. They didn't know the implications of that and how some people would perceive that. And so they bought $5 red hats so they could track each other as they were, you know, at their march. And then they were told, go wait on the stairs at 5 o'clock for your bus, and the bus will come and pick you guys up and we go home back to Kentucky. And they were there waiting. And as they were there, they were approached and surrounded by adults and really taunted. And once we saw all the video, we did a call out for everybody who was there shooting all the user generated video, which is a common thing that we do. We have a branch of our company we call forensic filmmaking, where we work on high profile criminal cases. And so we do a call out for all the, you know, all the security camera footage and user generated footage. And as soon as we got it together, we had one particular 2-hour live stream that we saw back to front, and we watched that whole thing several times and just said, these kids don't say "build the wall" once. They don't even curse once. Like they're the ones saying, "Why are you being so mean to us? And why are you calling us racist and cracker?" And, you know, like, "Can we shake hands? I don't know what we did." And, you know, the kids are just like, what are these adults suddenly so hostile about? What did we do? And then this becomes a big thing, and it's all, you know, it was just all a political thing. It was another way for them to try to take down the existing president at that time. It was clear, and they were using the kids as a human sacrifice to achieve that political agenda. And as we discovered, as we got to a point where my whole team said, this is not what the headlines say. Once again, I mean, these kids are, I said, I know, I see it. So what do we do? And I said, well, if we tell the truth on this one, we're going to be placed in that basket of deplorables. And that's a place that you don't come out of. And that bridge building that we've always wanted to do is probably going to be burned, because there's going to be some people on the left that will never listen to us again. But the alternative is letting these kids be persecuted for something they didn't do. And as a father of 2 sons, I just said, I just can't do that. So let's let the cards fall where they fall, and let's tell the truth. And that video went on to help those young men, at least Nick Sandman, who was the main target of that agenda, to win multi-million-dollar lawsuits against 3 of the major propagandist machines out there. So I'm very proud of that.
That's a very, very fantastic work that you did.
Yeah, thank you.
Very, very fantastic. It really touched me when I was reading your book, and I read that and I was like, wow, you took the right path there.
Thank you.
Now, going back to your movies, in the beginning of the pandemic 2, Indoctrination, Event 201 is featured prominently. Essentially, it's like a scripted Event 201 is essentially a scripted simulation of a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And while they claim at the time that it was like a scripted simulation, looking back at it from now, it looks more like it was possibly a dry run or even a test run for a pandemic. And what I mean by that is like they could have brought all these pieces together to kind of like get these methods and stuff where they're able to like take over the world by using a virus, like an enemy, a hidden enemy, a silent enemy that nobody can see. Now, do you feel that this was potentially a dry run or even a test run for the pandemic?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's why we called it plandemic. It's just one of countless examples of where they actually planned through simulation and through manifestos and open literature exactly what they're going to do. You know, the Event 201 was just one of them. You have the scenario for future technologies of which we expose in Plandemic 2 as well. You have the Clade-X event, which was pretty much Event 201, but a few years before. A lot of the same players, a little less impressive in its production value, slightly less. And, you know, from what we can understand is that these things are a way for them to kind of seed the cognitive field. And so they get these influencers together, these corporate titans together that have such a stake in social structures that they knew that they would be concerned if they were to tell them that we very likely will have a major shakeup in business and in trade, and because of some form of an outbreak. And so having these people participate, and most of them aren't, you know, mustache twirling, you know, villains that are all there knowing they're all part of it. The majority of them are just like the rest of the people. They're so concerned with tribalism to fit in with their neighbor that when they sit next to these other powerful players and they're all nodding their head and agreeing, they should shut off their critical thinking abilities to go along with the tribe. It's really one of the reasons that the masks were about compliance, because the more that we see people out in the world wearing the mask, even the ones that have been completely determined as being useless. CDC just came out again recently saying the cloth masks do nothing and they can actually be even dangerous, which is what we said in Plandemic 1. But when people see it, it reminds them of compliance. It reminds them, well, everyone else is doing it. So, you know, most people report to me that they'll have it in their pocket. They'll walk in, they'll look around in the store and they go, oh, okay, everyone's wearing a mask. Okay, I'll put my mask on. And that's flexing that you know, that response mechanism that has us follow the herd and do what they're doing. And if you look at any trends, you know, just the most bizarre trends, any social fashion trends, some of them are just are bizarre. You know, it's like we're going to wear have our whole ass hanging out, wear our pants down below our butt cheeks. Like that's somehow caught on. And that really actually came from prison life. You know, that was a culture that was started out of, you know, kids seeing that they're heroes, they're imprisoned heroes that were issued state pants that had no belt because you don't want them to hang themselves in their cell. Their pants were also, you know, often sagging. So taken from something negative like that, then it becomes a cultural fashion, a trend. That's just one example of all the other areas that every culture adapts to the most bizarre trends. We'll do whatever. If cool people, you know, influencers, which is, I think it's very interesting and very telling that, you know, that people that were once called stars and celebrities are now called what they really are, which is influencers. They're seen as people who influence, which is the very definition of propaganda. It's information that influences, typically political information. And so people are walking propaganda symbols. And so when we understand that this is how these things affect and infect intelligent people, by getting them all in a room together and seeing that, wow, the CEO of that major corporation and the founder of that corporation and the head of this and that, they're all in here nodding their head and going along. So I'm not going to go against these forces. These forces they have power over my company. And if I go against them, then all Google has to do is make my company disappear in search results and I'm done. So I better go along with this powerful group of people. And that's how they seeded over time. So then when they need these people to be on board, so that when they activate these things, then you have the tech titans supporting it, censoring people who go outside of that. That if you look at Event 201, they literally predicted everything that happened with great accuracy. And as the question that I ask in the movie is, if they knew that, for instance, that they were going to be short on proper masks, and this was at least a year before the outbreak the pandemic was announced, and it was funded by Bill Gates, and he knew that, why wouldn't he go into immediate production? Because they also knew, as Anthony Fauci said out loud and Bill Gates, that the virus was coming within Trump's term. And if they knew that, why didn't they? How long would it take to produce a few billion masks? Really? How much would that cost? Could these people put $10 billion together collectively, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and all these mega Jeff Bezos and all these people, and have that stuff produced in a couple of months? Of course they could. Why didn't they? Because it was getting people prepared that this was the reality. So then when it hit, instead of having a critical thinking response of going, well, that's weird, they told us that would come and they didn't take care of that, now we're here in this position. Instead, they go, oh, yeah, see, they're right. Oh, so I'm going to listen to them because I was at this meeting, this Event 201 thing. And these people are so amazing. They're prophetic. They knew exactly what was going to happen. So now they've earned my respect because they're that intelligent that they saw what was coming before the rest of the world. And so it has that kind of effect to enhance the propensity to follow.
You mentioned that Fauci said the virus is going to come during Trump's term. Well, I speak Chinese, and I was searching on the Chinese internet, and I found like a picture of Fauci with the head of the Chinese CDC. And what had happened was in 2017, Fauci invited the head of the Chinese CDC to America to tour the NIAID.
Yeah.
And what I found was that on the Chinese internet, that the picture of this meeting was absolutely scrubbed. It was very, very difficult to find. Like the news article about the meeting was there to read, but the picture itself was 404 not found. So I went around and I looked at old web caches and all this old stuff, and it wasn't on like archives or anything. And I eventually found it on the Baidu web cache. And I found this image of Fauci and George Gao, the head of the Chinese CDC, standing in front of the NIAID like logo in America. And the Chinese text said it's like a meeting that they had to discuss emerging infectious disease. And after the meeting, George Gao invited Fauci to China in 2018 to continue their discussion. Now, you mentioned that Fauci was kind of foreboding like a virus hitting during Trump's term.
Yeah.
Could that 2017 meeting of Fauci and George Gao have been like a technical planning session, or perhaps like a way to coordinate the release of a virus down the road?
Absolutely possible. And it's, or is it all a coincidence? And that a short time later, he actually, while speaking at a university, declared that there is no doubt, his exact words, that we will see a surprise outbreak within Trump's term. There's a lot of people, professionals, infectious disease experts and pandemic experts who even ones that try to defend that, who will then say it is a little odd, because, while we can absolutely determine that, within the course of a decade, perhaps, or so, that there's a likelihood of it happening, to say something would happen within the course of, at that point, it was like, 3 years or whatever, is suspicious. It's suspect. And so, but of course, these leaders of this situation are having secret meetings. There was just another secret meeting held by the press to talk about new ways to combat, what they call conspiracy theories and but it's really, to stop the people from spreading the truth. And they all happen behind closed doors. And thanks to a lot of citizen journalists and brave independent media, these things are being busted when they happen now. But they went on for decades without us even knowing, because we weren't looking. We didn't have the unintended gift that is COVID-19 to alert us all that something is awry. And so, when we're all sleeping, which we've all been sleeping for a long time, it's easy to have these secret meetings, and the few people who have been onto them for years with the Bilderbergs and all of that, they know what was going on, but nobody listened to them. And the good news is people are listening now. And it's important that we understand. There's been some studies out of Germany that I'm looking into right now that go through our history of different revolutions and revelations that have happened through and within different nations throughout history, and that there's always, it's a 20, 30, 50 split. Is there's 30% of the people that will always believe the government and the leadership regardless. There's 20% that will never believe them regardless. And then there's 50% that are always fluctuating in the middle someplace of it could be, it might be. And what sways that group onto one side or the other is what they hear most being reported at them. So the reason that these the people at the helm of this agenda have completely captured our media, our narrative, is so that they can have control of that, and they can just keep repeating the same lies over and over. The good news is they've done so in such a poor way. They're so out of touch with the working class, the rest of us, that they've made so many mistakes one after the next that 50% is even more suspicious now. That even though that they're hearing one repetitive narrative every single day, that narrative is actually starting to backfire now, because they're recognizing that 2 weeks of flatten the curve means 2 years or more, that one shot means 3, 4, 5 shots, and that is starting to wake them up to really question the leadership. And so it's our duty right now to speak up, to speak loudly, clearly, constructively, and without cease. Because the more we do that, and I don't mean in a righteous way, I don't mean in a way that's shaming people. We have to stop all of that stuff, and we have to just start speaking and just do what's happening on Telegram and all the networks that will allow it, which is few of them now, is to keep sharing what we're sharing, because eventually that 50% will hear it enough, and they'll compare it, the logic of what we're saying, and the fact that what we're saying has some consistency to it, and it's some logic to it, and they'll compare that eventually to the illogical, inconsistent information that they keep receiving from CNN and MSNBC and all of the other pundits. And eventually they will tilt towards the good side. And that is when, and that's happening now, I would say. That we're in the middle of that shift right now. But that's the good news. But we have to keep doing what we're doing. So I thank, like, the two of you and anyone else who's taking the risk to have people like me on and to consistently share what you guys are sharing with the public and with large audiences. This is the work that everyone must do. Everyone has the potential to start their own YouTube channel, to become but do your homework, and be very careful in what you share out there, because I will say that, I get accused of being a conspiracy theorist. And the only thing that makes a lot of the public believe that is they often conflate what I do with things that I've never even said. And it's some of the radical, unfounded conspiracy theories that are out there that then my work gets conflated with, and other people that are doing this work. And there's a lot of subjects. It's also realizing that there's a strategy that everyone has to become really good at, or at least a lot better at. Of understanding that we're always speaking into a listening, and that collective listening is at a certain point in its ability to receive. And if we jump ahead of the curve and we say something like, there was a lot of information. I wanted to go into eugenics and a lot of stuff in Plandemic 2. And at the last minute, I said, let's pull it out. I can't talk about global genocide and eugenics and all this stuff right now. Today I could, because now it's all over. People are really considering that right now. So the global listening has shifted. But if I were to have said that earlier, yeah, I might win brownie points to say, hey, we were first and we did that, but that's not what matters to me. It's how do we open people up to receiving? So we, let's meet them where they are right now. And if we talk about eugenics and all this, and the fact that Bill Gates' father was on a Eugenics Society of America board, and he was, Margaret Singer's partner, and put most of the Planned Parenthoods in Black neighborhoods, and all the stuff that we wanted to say to show them this is where the real racism lives. And but it would have been the thing that they would have obsessed upon, and it would have deterred away from what we knew we had to speak about, which was really the patents and the conflicts of interest, because the paper trail is the stuff that they can't deny. It's there, their signatures are on it, and it's pretty evident. If you look at it, you understand who's involved, why they're involved, and the history behind this situation. And when you understand that, then you also understand how to undo all of that. And so that's what we're working on right now, is again kind of reverse engineering. How do we get here, and how do we get out of here? And a lot of how we get out of here is by not taking the bait to be distracted every single day by all of this crazy information that's coming out, but to literally build something new, kind of like Buckminster Fuller said. You won't defeat an old system by trying to defeat the old system, but by creating a new system that renders the old system obsolete. And so we're out busy right now. Let's just create new systems, new social media platforms, and give the people what they really want, that primal desire to be connected, to experience love, family, freedom, fun. That's at the core of what we all want: good health, happiness. And right now, that's the one thing that's being taken away from everyone. And the health is being taken away, the happiness is being taken away, family, connectedness. And so if we can provide the possibility of that for people, so they can see that it's there for them if they choose it, without shaming them for their beliefs, but actually creating a safety net for them to leap off of this what they've been indoctrinated into. It's important that we give. The more we shame people, the deeper the ego digs, because when you've had a bunch of people saying you're stupid and you're wrong, even when you start to see the evidence in the world, like, maybe I was wrong, which a lot of people are waking up right now going, maybe I was wrong. Maybe the vaccines are dangerous, and maybe Anthony Fauci is not good. But when you've had so much shame thrown at you, it's so hard for people to come back, because they think what they're doing, now I'm validating everyone who said I was stupid. I'm going to go out in the world and say I'm stupid. So we have to be careful to find a conscious way to let people know that, first of all, these mind control programs were designed for highly intelligent people. It's also weaponized morality. It's also designed for people who care a lot. So I always tell people, it's not because you're stupid, and it's not because you're uncaring. It's because you're very caring. That's how I got roped in, why I was on the far left forever, because I'm a very intensely caring person. And it's also made for highly intelligent people. I wouldn't put myself in that category, but the college professors and people that it was designed for, because they influence the next working class. It was designed for. I have a lot of friends who've come to me to say, I just can't believe my brother, he's one of the smartest people I know, I can't believe he bought into this. Say, no, it's exactly made for your brother to believe. And that's why. And so when you have people understand that you are only led astray because you're caring and you're intelligent, then you actually give them reason to come out and say, all right, I'm wrong, and I'm sorry. And they can actually see what a powerful thing it is to do. You mentioned the word hero earlier, and that's a real heroic thing to do, to come out and say, I was totally wrong. I had to come out after traveling with Bernie Sanders and tell everyone, after being one of his loudest supporters out there, I had to come out and say, I was wrong. And I withdraw my support for him. And that was the first time I was called a traitor. And that's when I realized, wow, it's a cult. I was part of a cult. I didn't know it. But no one knows they're part of a cult when they're part of a cult.
No, they don't.
Thank you for that. Now, let's take a 30-second break here, and we'll come back in a little bit.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Peterson, and I support Ron Watkins for Congress. You can support him by donating to Ron Watkins at ronaldwatkins.com. We need more people like Ron in Congress.
Hi, this is Gail Golick, and I am running for Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, District 2 in Arizona. And I fully support Ron Watkins for Congress. He and I are very much alike in the fact that we are both grassroots street fighters who are not going to tolerate this inequality in our justice system. And we want to fight back to save America. And we need more people like Ron Watkins in Congress. Please support him by donating to Ron Watkins at ronaldwatkins.com. That's spelled RONALDWATKINS.com. Thank you for your support, and God bless America.
Okay, welcome back. And I'm here with Tony Teora and Mickey, and we're just discussing his movie, The Pandemic. And I'm running for Congress, Mickey, and after watching The Pandemic, it's painfully obvious that politicians pushing the Great Reset are the cancer. They are the cancer capitalizing on the mass fear produced by like the billions of dollars of marketing being spent to market COVID as a killer virus. Now, what kind of legislation can you recommend that we bring into Congress and the House specifically in the next cycle?
Any policy that reduces the power of the federal government. And I don't mean take it away and demolish it and do it. I mean, that brings government back to what it was originally intended to do, and that is to serve the people. But the overreach of the federal government is the problem. And that is when I say I withdrew my support for Bernie Sanders, after being on the road and interviewing a lot of young people that were very pro-socialism and even very pro-communism, which was a kind of a jolt to my system to understand that really existed and that they were really clear and even had some incredible talking points that would have me think about it and not have to go look it up and study it and go, wow, okay. But what does this mean at the end of the day? I think they're all really missing a very, very important point, and that is the thing that drew me to the possibility of socialism was I was raised with a single mother on welfare. My mother had 4 kids on her own. Her husband had died. And so this rhetoric about helping those at the bottom, helping the single mothers, and all of that really, really, really touched me. And I thought, I want that. So if socialism is a way to bring that equality where those that are more fortunate are helping those in the bottom so that there's no one really left behind, I'm all for it. What I didn't stop to think about, which is what most socialists don't think about, is, and I started to ask people this, I said, well, do you trust the government to deliver that to you? Do you know that the extra tax money is actually going to be used in the way that you hope it's going to be used? Because my observation is that the government rarely puts our tax money where we want it to go. It goes to war and funding all kinds of things that we don't want. So how is me paying 60, 70% taxes going to ensure that that's going to go to people like my mother, the next generation of single moms out there taking care of 4 kids or whatever it might be? And they couldn't answer that question. So then I would say, well, it just seems to me that instead of empowering the federal government to have more control over our life by giving them more money, and then them in turn giving us some kind of stipend back, which scares me because now we, particularly through COVID, we understand that they will turn your money off. It's going to be digital and they'll have control of it. And the moment you say something online that they don't like, then they have the ability to say, well, you don't eat this month. We're going to punish you. So fend for yourself this month, and next month, I'm sure you'll be a much better citizen. And that's happening now in Australia and Canada and places like that, where they're taking total control of their citizenry. And so I would say, well, I don't see people really looking at what's an alternative to that. What is a way that we can perhaps reduce and or cancel some of the student debt? Because I think the kids have been screwed. And it sucks, going to, 4 years of college, learning something that isn't even a real thing in the world. And then being broadsided by that reality when you get out into the workforce, then realize you have $100,000 in debt. And so now you got to be a barista for the next 10 years, and all of your degree and everything you worked for, you can't even touch. And what does that create in a young person who's just entering the workforce and entering their life? And what does that need? No time for children, no time for anything. And that's what they want. No, people to not have free time, because when you have free time, then you can get clear on who you are, do all the work, get healthy, do the inner work to get, more, to really get more in touch with your own personal wisdom. You can do all that stuff. But when you're out of time and you just come home, you want to veg out. And what do you veg out to? The propaganda that they own and they serve every single day. And so that's all part of it. And so, I would ask them, I would say, well, instead of the people paying more of our hard-earned money, because isn't that the problem right now, is that we don't get to take home is what we really need to not just maintain our life, not just to pay our cell bill and our rent and our car or whatever it might be, but we don't have money to, if we want to engage in some kind of a civil lawsuit to defend our liberties. Very few people have money to do that. And that's what they want. They don't want people to have that independent, sovereign ability to take powerful moves like that. We don't have time. And aside from that, just to, go on vacation with our family and enjoy our children or whatever it might be. And so I would say to them, well, what if we paid less taxes? And for instance, like what if there were no income tax? And instead of giving more to the government, we abolished income tax. And then instead of giving a third of our money away or half of our money away every month, maybe we're giving a quarter or 20% or 15% away, and we get to keep what we earn. Wouldn't that satisfy even the minimum wage issue and all of that? Wouldn't that be a better solution than actually giving the government more power to control our lives? And I wanted to engage in these conversations when I was on the road with Bernie Sanders and his supporters, and it was amazing at how wired they were to shut down any other potential conversation. It was just, this way is the only way. And I just thought, this is a dangerous way to approach these things. There was no debate, the first time that I started hearing, well, you're privileged, so of course you're going to look at things from that way. And I said, wow, I'm privileged. Why? How do you know I'm privileged? Because honestly, at the time with Bernie Sanders, I probably had, $2,000 in the bank, and I was in the rat race of struggling as an artist, feast and famine, might have 50,000 one month and be in the red the next month. And I lived like that for a long time. So I said, okay, I explained to one person, I said, I do feel privileged just to be alive, just to be in this country. I feel totally privileged. So I'm not saying I'm not privileged, but how am I privileged more than you? And I tell my story. I said, I was an unwanted birth that managed to get into this existence, raised on welfare. My mom was my best friend. My brother died of AIDS. 34 days later, she died of cancer. I was kind of blacklisted by my family because I came into this life by a man that they considered to be a womanizer, and he never married my mom and never paid child support. So I was a bastard child, and I didn't really feel the love from my family. And I had to kind of reinvent myself and make my life. I said, so where is the white privilege in that? I don't understand it. And that's not my lived experience. You guys talk about lived experience all the time. Can I not have my lived experience? So maybe it's different from the way you see it. And the answer was no, because you're a white man and you'll never get it. And you should never talk about any issues to deal with a female because you're a man. And you should never talk about any issues to deal with poverty or anything because you're a white man. And I just thought, this is not going to lead to any place good at all.
That hits me too, Mickey.
Yeah.
I fought my whole life. Like when my dad died when I was 8 years old, I was in a similar situation. My mom was on welfare. We lived on a trailer on the farm for a while when we were broke. I know what it's like to grow up hungry and to fight your way. All my college and everything, I paid for it myself. And then, and people think sometimes, because I ran a company previously, people are like, oh, you're, an old white guy, you don't understand, you're privileged or whatever. And I think that's we've got to get beyond that. It's sad that's what society has turned into. It's become us and them, us against them, the divisiveness. I think we need to become closer. If we don't do that, I don't see anything good things coming, from this kind of divisiveness. Question that I wanted to ask you though, I watched your movies and I didn't read your whole book yet. I'm still reading it and I'm really enjoying it. And I gave it to a couple of people already. I actually bought a few copies and sent out a few copies. The one of the things I noticed was the CDC. I think, money is the root of all evil. And it looks like with the patents and things that are going on, because Ron, I'm helping Ron with his campaign. He's running for Congress in Arizona, as you're probably well aware. And I'm helping him with his campaign. And we don't want to just like get into office. Our goal is to do stuff now, to talk to great people like you. We've talked to Dr. Zelenko. We want to make changes, whether people are in office or not. I think in many respects, you can make more change by not being in office. So it seems like these patents and the laws, this Bain-Dole law that went into effect in 1979 that allowed, federal funding for patents, and this whole CDC having patents on the coronavirus. I'm curious, what your thoughts are on the patents and how do it seems like it's the conflicts of interest that if like someone like Ron, when he gets into office, he's talked about this to me about trying to change laws, both for digital for truth to be able to stop people from like Google and the big tech from, cutting out your Twitter accounts and not being able to communicate anymore. And also this whole mandate stuff. Ron wants to stop all that. What's your advice to a young, up and coming congressman, hopefully for Ron? What would you advise somebody in politics? What could we do politically to fix this system with like patents and stuff like that?
Well, when I asked that question of Dr. Judy Mikovits in Plandemic 1, she said, repeal the Bayh-Dole Act. So that's a really great place to start. So the Bayh-Dole Act was initiated and to allow scientists to obtain the patents on anything that they help to develop. And while there's a sensible element of that, where, okay, I can understand having the incentive to be rewarded for creating something that benefits mankind. I want people to have that kind of incentive. I think that's the upside of capitalism, where it's incentivizing people to serve the people better. And when they create a service that really does that, then they win in the world of capitalism, in the free market. And so in that same sense, I would say, to look at these laws that were put into place that went beyond incentivizing people to create cures. And what they actually ended up doing was it inspired a generation of scientists to hoard discoveries instead of, this model that we talked about earlier, which is like giving your films away. It's this hoarding energy of, I want to own this, and this could be huge. It's like me creating penicillin. I could be set up billions and trillions of dollars for the rest of my life. Although there are some caps and limits on what most of the scientists can obtain and earn through each patent, there's no limit to how many patents they can profit from. And so, if the cap is say $150,000 each patent, well, if they are involved in dozens of these, it's a very, very profitable business. And what, the Bayh-Dole Act made that possible. And that changed science in a really big way, because now you have what happened, say, with ivermectin, which is you have a drug that's off patent that has 40 years of data behind it. Just like hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, won the Nobel Peace Prize and is incredibly potent for things like COVID and many other things. And it has been proven through time with very little side effects. But because it's off patent, because hydroxychloroquine is, and because there are some laws that prohibit people from patenting anything natural, which is why there's been such a fight against something like cannabis, something that is proven to have incredible value when it comes to things, illnesses like cancer and Alzheimer's and a lot of things that the cannabis is an incredible medicine for. But anything that is fully based on nature and not created by man synthetically can't be patented in most situations. And so the reason they've demonized things like cannabis is because of that. They can't own it, and therefore they're not going to allow it to become so prevalent, because what it will do is then it will then make the need for their synthetic remedies less and less and less, until the people finally wake up to realize we need very little pharmaceuticals in our life, very little. And right now there's a lot, and there are people that are taking, multiple opioids a day, and it's a major issue. And the fact that it was just discovered that fentanyl is the number one killer of men 18 to 40, is a serious issue that we need to look at, but that's not a pandemic. It's the number one killer of men in that age group, no matter how healthy they are. That's not declared a pandemic, and it's far more deadly than coronavirus will ever be. And it can actually, it can wipe out a city if it's put in the water systems. There's a lot of reason to be incredibly aware of the potential of that synthetic poison. Yet the media is saying very little about it, which is very, very telling. So a long answer to your short question is just to, the person to really ask this to is David Martin, because, he's the reason I chose to have him as the main feature in Plandemic 2 was after I'd interviewed him, I realized the guy's a genius, and he holds a history of information regarding the world of patents that very few people know. And he's such a generous, caring, wonderful person that he's put it all out in the world for free. He, like myself, is not concerned at all with making money. And like so many of these doctors who haven't had a job in 2 years and will probably never be allowed to fully practice again, they're sacrificing a lot to get out and do what they do. And there's this misconception that they're trying to be, celebrities and all that. And it's just not true. And those who are, they don't last long, because this is a wrong thing to practice any kind of selfishness through. This is a very serious situation that we're in as a global community called humanity. And it is, everyone should be doing everything in their powers, turn all your job, get rid of all your fetishes and all your addictions and all your, if you're addicted to the latest binge watching Netflix series, whatever, how much time is that taking you away from being on the front line of the situation? Like we have to
Mickey,
really look at that right now.
We see that like scientists, doctors, and medical workers, they spend a lot of like time and effort and investment really into their education, and they begin their jobs like later in life. Now, they get threatened now to lose their jobs over mandates, and even just speaking out and prescribing medicines in a certain way that goes against what the federal government wants. And we're seeing this more and more, especially with medicines like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. Now, we've got a lot of brave doctors like Dr. Zelenko, Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough, and they're standing up really in a big way. Now, there's going to be a lot of doctors and nurses and medical care workers watching this interview and listening to this podcast. What can they do to stand up to tyranny today without putting their decades of education and investment and effort on the line?
I would say put all of that on the line. I mean, it's as simple as that. This is not the moment that we think about any of that, because here's the harsh reality. And most of the people that are considering speaking out know this is true anyway. All that stuff you're protecting is going to be gone soon anyway, if you don't speak out. Literally, when I was offered $17 million to share the licensing rights of Plandemic, I said no. And the reason was, I said, because if I make any kind of moves like that and kill this opportunity that we have before us right now, that money won't be worth anything soon. And it's understanding that the stuff we're protecting, I get it. It's not an easy choice. They go to school for a long time. They have big mortgages. They have, $1,000 a month car lease, whatever it might be. And if you have to let that shit go, let it go. You don't need it, and it won't be there long anyway. I know doctors, really brave doctors, who sold their homes a year into this and downsized, and they're living now in a $3,000 a month home from $15,000 to whatever, $2,500 a month. Very modest. They got rid of their 2 cars, they have 1 car now. And they understand that, and they're putting their money towards whatever they can do to straighten this situation out. And that's what everyone should be doing right now. So the doctors that are hiding, that actually have information, remember your oath. Because every day, every moment you hide, you're dishonoring your oath to do no harm. You're actually doing harm. And so that might sound easy, but take it from a guy who, I definitely risked it all. I had all of my respect in business, my investors, everyone was on the left. And I had to make a choice to know that I'm going to sever 20 years of good relationships. And I don't know what the future is going to hold for me if I make this choice. But I made the choice in service to truth and in service to humanity. And what I can say is the good news is I don't regret a moment of it, because what has come from it is the satisfaction, the fulfillment of actually knowing that for the first time in my life, I'm actually serving my life purpose. And the feeling of that is something that I can't even put into words, of knowing that you're waking up every day. This is the work I came here to do. I'm not just maintaining a bunch of crap. I'm not just forwarding someone else's agenda or selling somebody else's product. I'm doing my best in the most humble way that I can possibly be to just be in service. And that all these doctors are doing that too. And when they're coming from that place, they have some kind of connection. And I always say, with the God of your choice, name it whatever you want to name it. Even if you're an atheist, I have a lot of very intelligent atheist friends. When I dig into conversations with them, which I love to do because it's always an interesting conversation, they'll talk about their reverence for nature. And I'll say, that's God to me. That's it. That's what we're being severed from. When I say, God is under attack, I'm talking about nature, the intelligence, the broadcast of nature that informs all the plants outside your room right now, all the animals, the insects, all of that. They're in tune to something that the humans have lost touch with. This thing we call our intuition or whatever, this thing that speaks to us every now and then, which is available to speak to us at all times, if we listen, but we don't listen to the right, I would say, channel. It's almost like a frequency you have to tune yourself to. If we don't listen to that, then we're playing somebody else's music, and we live our lives, dancing awkwardly to somebody else's bad song. And then we realize why, when we, reach a certain age, we're going, this isn't where I thought I'd be. I'm not happy with my life. I'm not happy with the people that are in my life. And this is not what I thought I'd be doing. There's so many people end up there. It's so common. And so what we have to do, it's never too late to come back to that moment of saying, all it takes is being true to yourself, which is true to everyone else within the human organism. And what I've witnessed for myself, and I've had numerous above me as a dining room table that I have a lot of amazing conversations with truly the people that are on the front line of the situations. And I would call them heroes, Tony. They're truly amazing. I don't say selfless, because I don't think we'll ever become totally selfless, but they're selfless as you can be, and they truly care, and they're in service to something that they call God. And having that awareness, there's been a concerted effort to sever us from considering that there's an intelligence out there. And the moment we do that, we become isolated. And that isolation, ultimately, we think that's independence. We think, oh, I'm being a rebel now because I'm not part of that organized religion cult thing. You can go too far with that, to where we become isolated and actually weaker, because now that's what allows the ego to take over, because we think we're it, instead of there's something else working through me. So when someone gives me a compliment, I have an internal dialogue that I will say, thank you so much. I receive your gratitude, but I also know that it's not me. There's something else at work here. And I just have to keep saying yes to it, and just keep in communication with whatever that is. That might sound like too far for a lot of people, but this is just my truth. But the more you do that, the more you remember. It's why, for years we've seen people receiving, the highest honors in entertainment. And a lot of times people that aren't religious will get up and say, I just want to say thank you to God, because I don't know where this song came from. It just came through me. I don't remember writing it. Most great literature and music and art, if you have a moment to talk to the artist and you ask them about the experience of creating their most iconic and valuable and transformative works of art, they will say something akin to, it wasn't me, man. I don't remember writing this stuff. It just kind of wrote me. And there's something in there that we need to take a deeper look at. We've not even scratched the surface to understand what's operating when that happens, what's working through us. And as new agey, whatever it might sound, I see the human body as an instrument to receive this broadcast of intelligence. And the moment we tune into that, all I know is the bravest people that leave me in awe when I interview them are the people that have some awareness of this. And you give them a compliment and they're immediately aware that, well, thank you. And I don't really see it as me. Like Judy Mikovits is she'll say thank you, but I'm in service.
Yeah.
And there's something
Well,
about that keeps the ego from putting its claws in it and saying, yeah, it's me. I'm cool. I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I'm powerful. And that's where the trouble begins. And that's where, all these Bill Gates of the world, that's how they've lost touch with who and what they are, is they bought into their own hype.
Could you give us like an update on what Judy Mikovits is up to now?
Absolutely. So Judy Mikovits, I don't know if you guys have seen it or not, but her husband died recently. And so we made a memorial together and put a little 7-minute movie out in the world so that she could let everyone know that she's doing fine. Her husband had COPD, which is a respiratory condition for 20 some odd years. And he had to take very specific heart and blood pressure medication. He contracted COVID and would have been just fine. But unfortunately, due to an infection that he got because of the Santa Ana winds, he had to go into emergency room. And they found out that Judy was not, and that he was not vaccinated, and they kept her away for 2 days. She gave him his heart medicine and said, he needs this medicine. She finally got in 2 days later, found the bottle of pills completely unused. They didn't give him his heart medication, and he died. And
That's so terrible.
they didn't even test him. They just assumed he had COVID. And we all know that even if they did test him, that the tests are easily manipulated. And so it doesn't mean he had, even if he tested positive, that he had COVID. Another round of tragedy in that woman's life. But as she has done from everything, she has bounced back, and it's only made her stronger and more clear about what her mission is on this planet. But thanks for asking. She's one of my personal heroes, and I mean that the way that Tony meant it towards me.
Yeah, it's really terrible that they wouldn't give him his medicine. That's so terrible.
Very, very. She actually, they tried to give him remdesivir, which is a death sentence, can be a death sentence, and she told them, "Hell no, I'm a doctor. Don't do that." And she caught them one other time trying to sneak it into his IV bag.
Oh.
So yeah, there'll be some lawsuits.
Oh, I'm sure, and I'm sure she'll win them. Now let's take a few seconds for a commercial break.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Peterson, and I support Ron Watkins for Congress. You can support him by donating to Ron Watkins at ronaldwatkins.com. We need more people like Ron in Congress.
Hi, this is Gail Golick, and I am running for Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, District 2 in Arizona. And I fully support Ron Watkins for Congress.
Welcome back, everybody, and I'm here with Tony Teora and Mickey, and we're talking about the pandemic and all these really heavy topics. Now, something I really wanted to ask Mickey about is words. The raw power of words from spoken language. It can be the ultimate weapon, and the saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, the ultimate weapon can be used for either good or evil. And now we're seeing groups like big tech and the governments, they're partnering with dictionaries to redefine words.
Yeah.
An example of this is the word anti-vax. It's been edited and redefined to include anybody who is also anti-mandate.
Yeah.
So no longer can you be anti-mandate but pro-vax. If you're anti-mandate, then you're, by definition, you are anti-vax. They've also recently redefined the word vaccine itself. Now, canceling and editing words, it's an outright assault on the human psyche. Where do you see the world in 5 years with like a global ministry of truth effectively redefining words at their whim?
Well, really great question, because all of our language is being weaponized, and it's incredibly important for us to be aware of that and to not participate in that. There's a reason, I don't often quote Bible passages, but there's a reason that John 1:01 says, in the beginning was the Word. It's important to understand that our world is created from word. You know, we have perhaps a vision that might pop into the mind visually, and then we immediately decipher the vision into words, and then we speak those words into existence, and that's what creates the world around us. And there's people who understand that. And so if we can break down our language, there's the language that we speak externally, and then there's the language that we speak internally. And so the real damage is done when we start to lose our ability to utilize the accurate verbiage that helps us to understand any given situation. Once we can put landmines on certain words, then we no longer can use them to get us out of the situation. They're tools, because now we don't want to touch them because they've been tainted with some kind of a declaration, a judgment. And so, we can't talk about patriotism. How dare you for having that flag behind you, that symbol of oppression, right? We suddenly turned something that was known for evoking liberty and celebrating the experiment that is America, that is ultimately so successful despite horrific past and horrific failures, and all of the work that we have to do to course correct the social issues that we're still experiencing. Aside from that, there's a reason that anyone leaving their broken nation wants to come here first. And you understand that from your heritage. You understand that more deeply than I understand that. And so to break down the words love, which is one thing that I'm very fond of, patriotism, USA, mother, family, these are all the words that traditionally we would live and die for. And so when you can villainize those words, when you could say there is no mother, there's only birthing person, you lose the potency of mother. And when you lose the potency of mother, the person that actually gave you birth, then you lose the connection with this thing we call Mother Earth. And so this is all, part of this dialectic that leads us into this place that then when someone says something, it used to be, like the last thing you say to anyone in the hood is anything about their mama. Those are fighting words. And it's like, but if you can't say mother anymore because, it's against the new gender laws, then what is there to defend anymore? And when you have a generation of people that have had, it literally is, these are the pillars, these words are the pillars that prop up everything beautiful, everything wonderful, everything that makes the rest of the world want to come here to this great land. And so when you can no longer talk about them, or you misdirect them, and we can do that with all kinds of language, right? The word bad means good now, or as of decades ago. Sick is something that's awesome now. So we can twist these words, and we've been doing this forever. And to a certain degree, okay, we're just playing with language. But when you really run into this calculated effort to strip away from us anything that is worth living and dying for, then we just stay away from those subjects. And the moment we stay away from those subjects can be dissolved, and we don't do anything about it. It happens right before us, and we don't do anything about it. It's happening with all the families that weren't able to get together for New Year's or Christmas or Thanksgiving or all of that, right? Because now we've allowed these words, vaxxer or anti-vaxxer, to become between family. I know people who literally, their parents have not yet met their newborn son in a year, their grandchild, I mean, in a year. They refuse to meet their grandchild until their daughter and her husband become vaccinated, and they vaccinate their child, of course. And so when you understand that, yes, they've redefined everything, and I've been tracking this for years, everything, you know, all these words shift. And I try to collect, as soon as a new word becomes kind of the new thing that's being tossed around in mainstream media, I'll try to get a screen grab of the existing definition of that word, because I know it's just a matter of time before you look back at it and you go, oh, okay, white supremacist used to mean this, but now it means anyone who goes against the government. Oh, interesting. Oh, you know, anti-vax used to mean somebody who said they'll never take vaccines. Now it's for people who say, I'm all for vaccines, but I don't want the mandates. So they expand this so that those labels can then be placed on anyone who fights for their freedom, for their liberties, for their life, you know. And so it's a real danger. And you ask, where do I see ourselves in 5 years? Well, if we can allow this to continue, where we'll be in 5 years is in a very, very bad place.
Well,
And
we're seeing like a push for the left to adopt like a new Hippocratic oath, and it's going to ask physicians to eliminate their personal biases, combat discrimination to improve health literacy, and be an ally to minorities and other undeserved groups in society. Do you think it's warranted to change the Hippocratic oath that's been around for a very long time?
If there's a identifiable issue in it and it's a problem, I think we should be open to anything changing. If there's problems in our Constitution and it's actually not serving us and it's actually being utilized in its proper form, then we should be open to that. I don't see where it is, though. I don't see where the Hippocratic oath should be amended. You know, and it's clear that the only reason it is because they want to weaken it. And they want to, again, break down, because the oath is what's bringing a lot of doctors into their greatest courage, because they're remembering their oath. They're saying, wait a minute here. Now that I'm clear that my actions are harming people, I can't participate in this because this was what I went to school for and made an oath about. And so the moment you can break that down and the oath can be, you know, I shall do no harm most of the time, then they go, well, okay, well, then sometimes I can. And so it's weakening a vow. And, you know, I will say that, it's a short story. I'll go ahead and get into it. It's unrelated, but related. I was married once before and ended up divorced. And when I went to get, to marry my current wife, I had a moment right before we got married, about 2 days before. I had a moment of cold feet where I just was struck that, I think it was the day before the wedding, like, I'm getting married again tomorrow. What am I doing here? It didn't work out the first time. First time I tried to get married, it didn't work. And God, I hope I'm not messing this up. We have such a great relationship, and I don't know, is marriage the right thing? And is it necessary? And do we want to do it? And does it change the relationship in a bad way? And I just went through all this kind of panic. And so I was on a beach. We were going to get married in the Philippines. My wife is Filipina. And I just had a moment to myself where what was ironic was I'd taken off my sandals and I put my feet in the warm sand, and that's when they got cold. And I just sat down on the beach and I said to myself, why am I doing this? No, really, why am I doing this? Am I doing this just to please her family? Am I doing this because I do want to have babies and I'm not getting any younger and I really want to have kids? So I'm just getting married so that I can get past, the parents won't let their daughter have, they're traditional. They won't let their daughter have babies until we're married. And where am I at in this? What am I doing? And I was shown something again, when we listened to that benevolent broadcasts, amazing things happen. And what came to me was so vivid and so clear, Ron. It said, you're here to learn the difference of commitment and devotion. And I was left with this, like, well, yeah, commitment and devotion. Yeah. He said, well, you tried really hard in your first marriage to be committed. But the moment that things got bad between you two, the moment that They said commitment is a promise to the other being, the other body, the other person in your life. I'm committed. I'm working this out. But the moment that I had reason to believe that she had broke her commitment to me, then I was able to, I had a back door. Now I'm done with my commitment. And we broke up for a short period. I had an affair, got back together, admitted it to her, and we never recovered from that. And I lived with the guilt of it, and the cost of it was so much more than the short run time of pleasure that I had with that affair. It was just really, really costly for me. So we tried to make it work for another 7 years, and it wasn't possible. And so here I am getting, day before my second and what will be my final marriage. I'm starting to look at what is the difference between commitment and devotion. Commitment is a promise to the other person, and devotion is what? And devotion was a vow to the essence of the other person. So no matter what the body does, what the body says, if it doesn't please, if it gets whatever, if it changes, whatever that other person does is just what that person does. But I'm committed to, for whatever you want to call it, her spirit, her essence, whatever it is, like there's some coming together of the essence of who we are that's beyond the physical agreement that can be easily broken because people always fall out of agreement. And I said, it's a vow to that. And that's what I'm actually in love with. She's a beautiful, physically beautiful woman, but I'm in love with whatever this girl's spirit is. It's just so attractive. And that's what I'm truly marrying here. And that's the vow that I'm making to my wife. And so I share that with you because when we make a vow, an Hippocratic oath, when we make an oath, if we're truly living it, then nothing will come between that. It's strong, and it's not based upon the current structures of our world, but if it changes and my tribe goes this way, then I'll go that way too. And if there's too much pressure or discomfort, then I'll go ahead and go this way. No, I have an oath. I made it. I used power of my word, and I'm going to stick to it. And the doctors who are doing that are experiencing this phenomenon that we continue to talk about. And it's definitely going to be featured in Pandemic 3 because there's this phenomenon that takes over where they suddenly realize, like, I thought medicine was my purpose. That's what doctors say. I thought filmmaking was my purpose. No, it's this awakening. It's been participating in this awakening that is the thing that actually leaves me totally fulfilled, knowing that if I shall disappear tomorrow, I did my best. And being able to say that, very few people can say that, but I hope that a lot more people will be saying that in the coming, this new year and the years that follow, and that we stick with that. And we realize that that's what really will, that's our cloak. That's our shield to prevent this stuff from happening again, that we stay in that purpose, and we don't let anything, all these material things guide us away, especially as an artist. Like part of Pandemic 3 is reclaiming. It's like the new Renaissance, reclaiming our art, to say, no, you took it away. You influenced us. We were susceptible to it. So ultimately it's our fault. I'm responsible for it. But we were selling your products through our music, completely selling out. It's the old fable of the devil in the crossroads, right? We'll make you famous, but you have to do what we want you to do. And almost every artist, actors and people have done this. They've just sold their souls for their fame and fortune. But the moment we reclaim it and say, no, this is my gift. This is music. This is painting. This is literature. This is poetry, whatever it is. And you're not going to F with it. It's mine. It's going to stay pure and it's going to stay true. And I'm going to speak my truth, whether you like it or not, or whether it's comfortable or not. And I'm going to speak it with the intention of knowing that every time I put something out into the world, it actually shapes the world that I live in and that my children will someday live in. And so there's a sense of artistic responsibility that we need to come back into, from my opinion.
Thank you so much for that. And, for the Pandemic 3, I heard that like a major theme of it is to follow the receipts. Now, there's some word going around in the grapevine that like you're working closely with some certain politicians, and I'm not sure how much you can expound on at the moment, but is there anything that you could tell us about that isn't like already out there?
Well, we've interviewed a couple of politicians that stood out to us because they're fighting mandates. But I'm not working with a whole lot of people in politics right now. I don't find that incredibly useful. And it's just about featuring the ones that understand the value of our Constitution, that are out there, and not just politicians, but airline pilots and firefighters and frontline workers and cops, the people that are honoring their oath and understanding that they're willing to lose their job and be outcast by their tribe, if it means that they're just telling the truth. And so the real purpose of Plandemic 3 is to stop the indoctrination and trafficking of our children. Really, the children for me is one of my deepest concerns and loves. And I've always loved kids since I was a baby. And I have two sons that are the same way too. I have a 7-year-old that points out every cute baby. And, it's in the genes, I guess. And so there's a major attack happening. And if you understand the history of I'm working with a very brilliant elder, G. Edward Griffin, who wrote The Creature of Jekyll Island. And he gave I highly recommend your viewers, if they have not seen it yet, he has a lecture online called More Deadly Than War that was given in 1969. And he's going to be in Plandemic 3 because he warned the world in the 60s what was coming. And it wasn't through prediction. It was just through him literally reading the manifestos, the communist manifestos, and reading a chapter. And that's what More Deadly Than War is. He just picks up a chapter and reads it and says, they will pit white people against black people and black people against white people. Then they will guilt the white people into supporting the black people, but they won't actually be supporting the black people. They'll be using the black people as cannon fodder. And then they'll create anti-fascist organizations and autonomous zones, and they'll defund the police, and they'll burn down the cities. And the final stage is they'll go after our children. And so we're in that stage right now. They're going after our children. And so Plandemic 3 is to stop that. And through stopping that, we have to then address all of the different organizations. And they're always organizations that appear benevolent, and they appeal to, again, the people who care. And so, the Black Lives Matters and you go, of course, I want to fight for people of color. And I want to fight for anyone who's being marginalized or oppressed or anything like that. Absolutely. But when you really get down to what these groups are actually causing for Black and brown people, it's not good. And when you understand the real, the outcome of critical race theory, you understand that it's going to create a generation of radicals, self-hating radicals. If they're white, they're going to hate themselves. All of them will hate their own country, and they're not going to be united in their fight together. They will all be divided. It just creates an indoctrination stance of hate, and that once you're wired for that, then it just takes anyone to suggest that's the reason that you should hate that person, and then you turn your hate on them. And so they become little robots where they can just be manipulated through rage. And that's not what the world that we want to live in. And so how do you achieve that? What it says it's for, but really achieve it? What part of the climate narrative is all about fear and terrorizing our young people to stop procreating, to live in shame, so much shame that will ultimately, what's it going to cause? Well, it's already in action right now. Is the moment it went from, if they called it what it was, the moment that movement said it's pollution, then we would know exactly what to do with it. We have the technology, we have the funding, we have all of it. We could fix it. We could start fixing it today, but they don't. They want to call it climate change, because then you go, well, how do you fix that? Well, you vote for me, and then I'm going to put the right policies in place. And what are those policies? Well, it's going to begin with, mark my words, it's going to begin with, you can only drive so many miles a month. And if you exceed that, then you get taxed. We're going to have carbon credits and tax. And then the next stage of that's going to be, no one should own a car. There should only be public transportation if you do have to go someplace. And then eventually that will phase out. And then no, you should stay in your home and work virtually. So you can't drive at all because even the public transportation is causing an issue, whatever. It's just going to go down the line until it's confined everybody into the box they call home. And so understanding that And we're going to reveal a lot of that to understand that, look, I'm a 20-some year environmentalist. I care about the environment. So it's not about just denying the fact that we have the potential to do great harm to our environment, and we have done great harm to our environment. Look at some of the oceans that we've just destroyed and polluted. So that's a real thing. We pump, toxins into our air. And so we have, but we have ways to clean up our water, our air, our soil, our food systems, all of that. We can do that. And so my problem as an environmentalist is the rhetoric around the trauma-based, terror-based climate narrative. What that causes, it takes our eye off the ball of actually fixing the problem. But that is what they don't want. There are cures for cancer available right now and have been for decades. They will never let those out because they don't want to cure cancer. You think they're going to have these, billion-dollar NGOs and places, organizations that raise hundreds of millions every single year to fight breast cancer and to do all this stuff. Most of them get revealed later that the money isn't going where it's supposed to go, and it's lining the pockets of all these people, and it's being used to lobby money in Capitol Hill. None of it does what they say it's going to do, but it all sounds great. So we have to get smart to that too. That, Citizens United and all these benevolent terminologies that are used are sometimes the opposite, are doing the opposite, achieving the opposite outcome. And so we have to get smart enough to realize that. And so anytime, the way for us to avoid these pitfalls is to realize this. These people, these paid actors who read a teleprompter, who call themselves journalists, but they're not, and they're part of these mainstream networks, and I mean all of them, Fox included, CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, all of them. By watching them, don't watch them, but also watch them. Don't watch them to actually receive guidance for your life in that what they say is true, but watch them to receive guidance in that what they say is the opposite of what you should do. So when they're repeating a line over and over and over, know that there's an agenda behind that. That repetition is what they need to literally hypnotize to cause mass formation. And to just know that the truth is diametrically opposed to what they're repeating. And so when they're saying, look over there, I have a tendency to look over there. And I usually see something they don't want me to see. And that's one of the ways that we've been able to predict things that are coming, is just, it doesn't take a highly intelligent person. You just go, okay, everyone's saying, look over there. I look over there, and what do I see? Oh, that's interesting. What is that? Why aren't they talking about that? Let's look at that. And we go over there and we look at it and we explore it and we go, oh, no wonder they don't want us to see this. This holds the secret. This holds the counter narrative that would undo everything that they're working for right now. So that's one of the ways that, that we're helping people to understand that we get a question a lot of like, how do we know what's true and how do we know who to follow and all of that? And that's one of the tips that I like to share with people.
Thank you so much, Mickey. And we should start wrapping this up. And I think Tony had one more question before we ended this.
Well, yeah, Mickey, your story is really inspirational. I totally agree with you about getting rid of your, got to change your life. I used to be president of a company, and I had a home in the US, and I kept a couple apartments and probably more stuff than I needed. And I always wanted to continue my writing, and I got rid of all that, kept one place, and I don't miss none of it. I don't miss none of the crap, to be honest. And I love what I'm doing now. I wouldn't be able to help Ron right now in his campaign and do the things and even meet interesting folks like you if I'd kept all that stuff. And, people don't realize that there's more to life than material, whether you're believe in God or you're spiritual or whatever. The material goods are something they're not as valuable as at the end of the day going to bed and saying, you know what, I did something interesting today. I'm making this place better. I have a 7-year-old son too, and that's what I think about. And by the way, it was easy for me to get rid of my place in California when they came out with all those crazy vaccination laws and whatnot. I think you were in California. It looks like you moved to Texas, which I think was a smart move. But I believe sincerely that when good men and women don't do anything, there's an old saying, I think quote somewhere about that evil wins. But it's folks like you and Ron who get out there and try to make a change for the betterment. Now everybody's going to get attacked for that. That's just the way it is when you're dealing with all this. You can call it evil, you can call it people just that are greedy, trying to run the world. But how do we get back to, like, what can the average person do, like, for a call to action to get more back to God, spirituality, or nature? I think we got to get back to more of that and become, like, maybe this has some connotation to it, but like an enlightened soul. If we're all fighting and just focusing on money and whatnot, I mean, I don't see a very good world going forward. What do you believe from all your heart? I mean, you've had like an unbelievable life that, like, I think very few in this world have had, and you've made change that I think very few people, have been able to do in this world. With your experience, if you had to tell the average person listening and watching, listening to the podcast and watching this video, what would you tell the average person, a few things that you've learned that they could do to make the world a better place for their kids?
Yeah, great question, Tony. Well, so as I mentioned earlier, I spent a couple of decades working with indigenous cultures. I was very fascinated by them. And to date, I think still remain the only filmmaker that was allowed to film certain sacred ceremonies, like a flesh offering and Sundance and Spirit Dance and several things that they've never allowed cameras into. And for some reason, again, on this crazy quest of my life, I end up in those positions. And being in that position has allowed me to sit with some very wise elders. And I've made the error 2 or 3 times to say to them, to acknowledge what I'm learning from them. And each time I found it very intriguing that they would stop me. Didn't matter what continent I'm on or what culture they're from. They would say, "You're not learning, you're remembering." I remember the first time I heard that, I said, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? And they said, you already know all this. You knew this as a baby. You've been severed from the remembering. Only difference with our people is we continue to listen to the river and to understand that nature's speaking to us, and you've lost touch with that. So you already know this. So don't think that you need to obtain more data, more information. You just need to reawaken to beyond the spell that has you turn away from your nature. And so I would say to people, it's time to return to our nature. There's a war against nature. We are brilliant and resilient beyond measure, these human bodies, but we've been made to, and if you look at the last 5 minutes of Plandemic 2, which is on our website at plandemicseries.com, I have just the 5 minutes on there. If people want to just check that out, it's a reminder of who we are and what we are. In that we have been told forever all these narratives that have been laced in all of our entertainment, that humans are a parasite, that we're a failed experiment. It's why we say things like, well, I'm only human, or he's only human. It's a weird thing to say when you understand the brilliance of these instruments and the privilege that come with us getting to inhabit these bodies for 80, 90 years, to have this experience that we call life. I mean, it's an incredible gift that most people take for granted. And most people take it for granted until they get so sick that they realize how precious life is. And then they change all their behavior to try to survive, because they understand that it's the greatest gift of all, to live. And so one way that we come back into that remembering is by returning to our nature, by tuning out everything that doesn't remind us that, anything that is trying to further take us away by having us kind of repulsed by our own nature. And right now there's so many people that are just repulsed by humanity. They're repulsed by their friends and their family. They're repulsed by their nation, their world. And I understand how that can happen when we see so much atrocity taking place. But to undo this so that we cease committing these atrocities, we have to come back into our love and appreciation for being alive and being human. And one way to do that is get your hands in the soil, grow your own food, take some time out of the digital realm, get off your damn smartphone, get out, go hiking, spend some time in silence, I'm constantly reminding my boys, because they're just filled with energy, 7 and 10 years old. And I'm always reminding them, don't fill your day full of stuff and chatter. Always find time in a day to just be silent. Just go sit outside. Well, what are we going to do? Nothing. That's the whole point. Find some time to do nothing, because we're constantly trying to find ways to fill our moments. I'm bored. Oh, let me flip on the TV. No, stop for a moment. Just be with yourself. Most people don't want to be with themselves because they don't like what comes up. They don't like to actually see reality. When you're silent long enough, reality starts to come back, and you start to realize, I'm kind of the source of all of this. I've enabled all of this. My failed relationships, I'm at the source of. My failing world, I'm at the source of. It's not just them. And the good news of that is, and people don't like to hear that, yes, it is them. I didn't participate. Yes, you did participate in it. You have, and you continue to do it right now. We allow these people to have this power over our lives. And every parent who's just dropped their kids off at the nearest school, how many of us, myself included, I would do it now. We've started our own homeschooling program, so I don't have to deal with this. And we interviewed our teachers. Took us about 4 months to find the right teacher, because it's like, who are you? What do you believe in? And let's get to know you. And we literally had sleepovers. They came over, brought their kids over, and we stayed together for 4 or 5 days, had dinner together. We want to get to know you. Are you worthy of teaching our children? What are you going to teach them? And how do you feel about this subject and that subject? And if there were subjects they weren't involved in, then I would expose them to it and say, what's your take on this? And I want to see how they respond to it. Because I'm not going to leave, no longer will I leave my child with somebody just because they call themselves a teacher and they're making $35,000 a year, which isn't enough to motivate anyone. And they show up and they just give the kids as daycare. But what's beyond that is the fact that now they've infiltrated all the school boards and teachers with these ideologies that are destructive to our children. So I'm just using that as an example to say, every parent who drops their kids off at school every single day is literally, and then they wonder why. I have a friend of mine that reached out to me about a year ago, and he said, you told me this was coming, and I couldn't believe it. He goes, now I have a 13-year-old daughter who's cutting herself. She doesn't know what sex she is. She says, America's horrible. She wants to move to Italy. And she says, we're fascists, her mom and dad. I'm like, yeah, that's there you go. There's your money well spent in that wonderful private school.
And she's lucky that the daughter isn't going to the child protective services and turning their parents in for, giving them advice that's different than what the teachers are giving. I mean, the world's completely upside down.
It is. So how do we combat that? How do we overcome that? We remember, first of all, what we want. I rattled off a list earlier on about everything that is kind of within our human nature. What do people really want? If you took away all the fetishes, if you took all that stuff away, you said at the very basic necessities, what do we want? Well, connection is a big thing. Even if we like our alone time and we consider ourselves a loner, there's still a part of connectivity. It doesn't always have to be human to human connection either, but it's connectedness. I want to feel connected with life, with the planet, with my food, with my purpose. There's when you're severed from all of that, you become very vulnerable to being and susceptible to all these herd mentality programs. And so again, it's what do we need to do to come back to our nature, to understand that at the very root of it all is asking ourselves key questions and asking each other key questions, to get off a little bit of telling each other the answer or telling each other what they should do, but start asking questions and then listening to the answers of like, are you happy right now? How's your relationship going really? And how's your relationship with your children? And what are the thoughts that you're thinking on a daily basis? And are you fulfilled? And if not, is it too late to work towards that? And what would you have to do to change it? What would you have to give up in your life to come back to an existence that is actually more fulfilling? What would you have to actually sacrifice? Like to start looking at those things and then ask yourself, am I willing to do that? Because if the answer is no, then you're part of the problem. And that's the enabling of the situation. And the moment we all step into our sovereignty and stop following anyone, myself or anyone, stop following, listen to the directions from people. But again, just listen as direction, as thank you for that direction. I haven't been there yet. You just gave me a map that will move me closer to a place that I choose to be. But remembering that we're here to remember. And that's it. We knew this as children. We knew this before all the words had formed, before all the social structures were embedded into our neurology. We knew this as children, that we'd look into a big person standing over us and we'd smile and kick our feet, because that having that interconnection was an experience that we knew we came here for. But now we have all these ideologies and all these judgments, and we're wired, particularly if you're on the left where I came from. And it's taken me, I'm still weeding through this programming to see how quick I have these little things. And somebody says this word, and I go from liking this person to being, oh, I don't know about this guy, because he said the wrong word. Like, this is programmed in me from following those ideologies for so long.
Wow. That's,
you know, and but having that self-analytical ability to go, I can respond to this, or I can just ask myself, is this true? Is it true because that man just said that he's a racist? Where did that come from? That thought, is that my thought? Now, if I can just be with this person and just go, he said that thing. And who told me that saying that thing equates to this man being a racist? Where did I get that? Whose thought is that? And what part of nature informs me of that? Or did he just say that thing? I work with my kids every day about, you know, don't try to make the world form to you and everyone say things the way you want to hear them. But it's your job to let people be free to speak to you the way they choose. And that they might speak to you harshly. And it's your job to process what they're saying, consider what they're saying. They might say you're an ass, and stop for a moment and go, am I being an ass right now? And I'll ask my 7-year-old, and I've asked him before, are you being a jerk? Kind of. All right. So he called you what you were. What were you doing? I was kind of pulling his hair. Well, that's a jerky thing to do. So he was not a mean guy. He's not a whatever you made him to be. He's calling you out for your behavior. So what could fix this situation? Don't pull his hair. There you go. Problem solved. And so if we start to listen to the language that's being used and also understand that it's rarely about us. My kids had at a trampoline park, had the first time someone said something really harsh to my 10-year-old. I think it was 9 at the time. And he came and he reported it to me. And I said, well, how does that feel? And he goes, not good. And I said, so what do you make of that? And he goes, I just wonder what happened to that kid that he would be so hateful. I go, there you go. That's the way to process that. He was actually feeling compassion, like, wonder if somebody was mean to that kid. He didn't say, oh, I'm that bad word that he called me. And am I really ugly, Dad? Am I really stupid? Am I really a queer? No, he didn't even go there. He just went, wow, we were just having fun playing, dodgeball. And that kid got so angry that I wonder what's going on inside him, that, maybe he's got a really mean father or older brother, or yeah, there you go. Like, just like that. So it was making him interested about the other person. And then the next step is, if that might be present there, what could you do to help that person? Could you actually go to them, and my sons have tried it, and it's just, especially with kids, it's so quick. They'll go to that person and go, hey, whatever I did, I wasn't aware of what I did, but I just want to introduce myself. And I'm, oh, bro, I'm sorry, man. No, I was just upset and caught up in the game. And they're friends instantly. You want to go over here? And yeah, let's go. And they go, and next thing, my son comes back and he's like, we're friends now. Awesome,
if only adults could be that intelligent,
I know,
Mickey.
right?
If only adults could actually own up to their own mistakes and look at others and say, what did I do wrong? I mean, if you look at today's world, adults, my son, I learned so much from my son. You probably do too. It makes me look in the mirror and say, wow, I learned something. When I learned something from my son, it's just beautiful. So
my greatest teachers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, guys. We're pushing 2 hours here. And I just want to thank you again so much for joining us today, Mickey. And I want to tell everybody that you can buy Mickey Willis's book on Amazon, and it's called Pandemic, 100% Censored, 0% Debunked.
And it's not just on Amazon.
It's
not
also
just on
many
Amazon,
places,
because
right?
I know a lot of people don't want to buy on Amazon, and I completely understand. If you go to the website at plandemicseries.com, there's about 5 choices of other more local bookstores you can buy it from.
Okay, great. And you mentioned all of the proceeds go to donations or nonprofits, right? So
all of my earnings from the book are actually going to a fund. We're going to create a documentary to help other parents set up homeschooling co-ops around the world so they can pull their kids out of the
Oh, that's a great thing to put it towards. And
awesome.
Everybody can go, if you haven't seen it yet, you should go watch the Plandemic series at plandemicseries.com. And you can follow Mickey on Gitter and Telegram. His Gitter account is gitter.com/user/Plandemic series, and his Telegram account is t.me/official Plandemic. Thank you again for joining us, Mickey, and it was so wonderful to talk to you.
Ron and Tony, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.